One of the most common questions I get to the channel is about how do you do solo RPG in a way that isn't some big grand campaign or doesn't require hours and hours of world building and placement in an existing massive system of rules and backstory, etc. What we're looking at here is my setup for the story I'm telling using the EZd6 rule set, which is a fast-moving game of fantasy mayhem. And I'm using also some tables from the EZd6 Book of Quests. I'm not using them exactly as intended, but I'm using them. And I'm using the principles and concepts from the Solo Game Master's Guide in terms of the 4 types of assets or resources that I think are necessary to support a solo RPG story. What this video is going to do is I'm going to just show you, this is the beginning kind of opening scene of what's going on. I'm going to explain how I got to that scene, and then we'll play out a few little story snippets from that scene using what I've developed to tell the story. Everything you see here in terms of what the resource is, where it's going to be referenced below in terms of what it is and where you can get it, at least where it is currently available as of the filming of this video. So I'm not necessarily going to go through that as I play, but everything you see will be referenced here. I'll say also that mainly what I'm focusing on in terms of this video is a simple system, EZd6, which we will go over the basic mechanics of it, all the supporting materials, well, and then the concepts from the Solo Game Master's Guide. But really, all of the supporting materials that you see here are just choices that I've made. You can make your own choices to support a story. It's not like you have to have this, that, or the other thing that I personally am using. I decided for the story that I wanted to have 3 characters because with a light rule set such as EZd6, there is a flexibility that is present, but there is also, I think, the need to create a dynamic structure for yourself that, for me, is easier to do with multiple characters and a kind of triangle of characters. So I went through and I decided that the anchor of my story is going to be this human conjurer, and basically this is a magician, somebody who has access to magic. It is somebody, in this case, who has botanical magic, that he can control plants, and that he is, it's essentially druid-like, but someone of nature, and that the options that he has, he can summon a water elemental, he can cause an enemy to become enraged, but he's about nature and the manipulation of nature. In the backstory, which I rolled up using an action and theme table from the Solo GM Guide, I came up with support a secret, or support secret. And I decided that this human conjurer is going to be a kind of young wizard who's lived in this town, and he has had a secret friend, this dwarf delver. This was also something I rolled up from the EZd6, and this dwarf delver his inclinations are to be an alchemist. He knows something about potion making, and he's sneaky. He also has access to this hedge wizard inclination, meaning that he can also cast some spells, even though he's a dwarf delver and somebody who's an adventurer and goes into dungeons and does things. He's got this access to magic, and I decided as such that he was basically taught this by the human conjurer, who is the son of this very elite sort of magical family. And that is the support secret that I came up with. That is part of what is going on here, that the dwarf delver needs to grow his magic in some way, and it's beyond the capability of our human conjurer here. He's kept his friend's secret, magical nature secret, and now they're going to be going on a quest. They're going to be going somewhere to get some help, basically, for the dwarf to grow his magic, but it can't be at risk to my main character here. I realize now I didn't give these people names yet, but that's okay. Taking with them, they decide to bring this halfling rascal. So this is a guy, he's basically one of the workers, the support staff, if you will, of the royal magical castle area where this favored son lives, but he's also a friend of the dwarf, and he's a friend, kind of the upstairs downstairs nature of this world. And this guy, the rascal, is somebody who's employed maybe by the parents of this conjurer to do things that need to get done. He's good at disabling traps, and he can do tricks, and he can roll surprise attacks and things. He's not he's not a big huge, nobody here is a big huge warrior type, but this guy is good for things that might arise. So that was sort of the beginning of my story, and I got there by I drew some cards from the outdoor encounter deck. I've got a sort of seeded deck here from a larger group that these are minor environmental encounters. But before I pulled out the environmental encounters, I pulled up these places, this odd treehouse, and it was from these that I got the suggestion that my human conjurer, living as he does in this magical place, played in nature, and that was perhaps the source of where he got his magic, out there from the wizard's tree and this odd tree house. And somehow maybe there is an old wizard here who's directing him to help the dwarf delver. I don't know, but this was these are part of his memories, basically, of his youth and where he came from. And then I got this rat familiar card and this place of power. So this place of power it turns out to be a dwarven made structure opening into a chamber that radiates holy magic. And that was what I used as the suggestion that my human conjurer was going to be helping his friend the dwarf get to the place where the dwarven magic exists. And that is how he's going to grow and develop. And so they're going to be traveling here. And then I got this rat familiar card. So this suggests, I'm not sure this rat familiar is with us. Perhaps he's waiting. Perhaps the rat familiar is waiting at this place of power that our party is trying to travel to become united with his person. And once that happens, the dwarf will be on his way to further development. And our rascal here, he doesn't really have a story arc per se. He's just kind of on the side, as it were, with the three of them. And so they're setting out, the tone of this is kind of light, and it is we're not using this map per se. I just have this back here to kind of suggest the sense that they're out in the open here. I have decided on a very simple sequence of play because what I want to do is give myself enough direction using my resources, my suggestive, my generative resources here, as well as the rules that I have and some restrictive sort of oracle tables that will guide things. So the source of what's going to be happening is the rolling of these dice, and I have assigned values to them. These are 12-sided dice, but they actually only have 10 different things. And as I'm going to roll them, and then I'm going to draw initiative cards. And the initiative cards will determine how I resolve these in order. And the resolution is going to be narrative based on my story. And I have keyed some of these things to, so for example, this icon means that I would be drawing 2 of these outdoor encounter cards and then kind of resolving them, or or rolling on what I call a random table of relevance. And I got my random tables in my prep. I went to this EZd6 book of quests, and there's tons of tables in here that are related to the individual quests. So this is a book intended for GMs, and it is a book of quests, as it says, and each one is separate. But what I did was I went through and I made a list of tables that I think could be potentially relevant to different areas that I might be traveling in. So for example, there's a table that has to do with villages or the outskirts or a haunted village or a lake. So I am going to be rolling on those as relevant if this comes up, or if nothing is relevant, then I'll be drawing a couple of these encounter cards. I'm not going to go through everything, but I decided here, for example, this green triangle means that I am in a safe place. I have an ability to forage here. We are traveling, we have rations, there's going to be time that will be passing, as well as threats that will be increasing. So this D12 is my threat die, and I'm starting it out on 3 because the higher the number, the higher the threat, and there's not no threat. We've left the safety of our magical, royal, protected area, and we're going out into the wilds, but it's not terribly dangerous at the moment. However, every time there are certain things happen, I will have to increase the threat die and do a threat roll, and I will need to be rolling a d12 under that value. If I roll above the value, the threat will increase. Once the threat gets to 12, we are going to be having a definite enemy encounter. Now, there are other ways that enemy encounters can happen, but a 12 on the threat die will be a definite, and then after that encounter, it will reset to probably 3, maybe it'll reset to 4. It depends, again, narratively, what is going on. I have taken the enemies that are present in the EZd6 main rule set, and I have done sort of basically turn them into a D30 table. So when there is an enemy encounter, I'll simply be rolling on this D30 table that I created from here, and we will encounter that enemy. So that is the basic sequence of play. Again, it's going to be generated by what I decided these values are. And I just decided on rolling 3 dice. I mean, it doesn't have to do with the fact that they're 3 characters. It just sort of felt right. And so right now they have left and they are sort of setting out, and we'll say they set out at dawn. That doesn't really matter. I'm not tracking time so specifically, but we will get prompts, as I said, for the ability to camp. We do have, somebody's carrying some rations, so we will be consuming those rations, and if we're able to forage, we will then be adding to them. It's pretty abstract, as it were. So the first thing for my sequence of play is to roll these dice, and oh, I got these red blotches are not good because I've got to roll an enemy. So that's actually a very poor way of starting out, with an encounter card and an enemy. Again, it's not an automatic combat. This is narrative based, but this is just my way of suggesting what's going on. However, the next step then is to draw these initiative cards and sort of assign them to the dice. This is just a way of getting a number between 1 and 12 that doesn't repeat. You don't need to use these. You could roll d12s and re-roll any number that is that repeats itself. So the first thing I got is an enemy. So sort of right away, as they step out, they encounter an enemy. And so thematically, what I'm going to say, rather than actually rolling on the enemy table, is that there's guards here, that there are guards to protect against enemies coming in, and perhaps guards to protect against the human conjurer going out. And the fact that there are 2 of them suggests to me that these are human guards that are, again, the relationship between our character here, the the prized prince son of the mage ruler and those who work for his father is tenuous, and perhaps he needs to make an attempt to talk his way out of the castle or the mage tower grounds. We also have this outdoor encounter suggestion here, so we will just pull, this is already shuffled, but I'll just show you that it's kind of random. I will pull this in here, and we'll see how we resolve if this gives us a suggestion of anything. So we pulled a gnarled trunk. This is a tree trunk, twisted and unusual. It's in the forest, but in this case, again, we're abstracting out. It's in the outdoor. Perhaps it's still on the edge of the castle grounds. It catches our attention. A sense of unease fills us. This cursed place was once the site of an elven mage's sanctuary. It was destroyed in an arcane disaster. The site is haunted by the spirits of the creatures killed in the accident. So using this as a suggestion for this, we've got these two guards standing here, and yes, I have decided that that's who they are because it makes narrative sense. I don't need to randomly roll on a table that's going to give me something like, let's see, what are some of the options it could be? Like a wraith or a big cat or something like that, a thug. It doesn't make sense. So message here is, despite this structure that I have that's going to help me along, narrative needs to guide what you're doing, and sometimes that means taking what you get as your prompt and figuring it out narratively as opposed to going to exactly what you had set up for yourself. So for example, if this was later on in the story and we were out in the wilderness and I rolled on these encounters, or I got these encounters, yes, I would do my D30 roll and we would just randomly be encountering like an orc that's out there or an ogre or some spiders. That would make narrative sense. Here, clearly what this is telling me is what we're developing here. So we have our human conjurer. He is attempting to talk to these guards to say, remember this evil that has beset my family, and me and my friends, we're gonna go out and remind you that we are the source of the good magic, and we have defended this world against this evil, this gnarled trunk that is at the edge of our property, perhaps right by the gates, is a reminder that we have staved off the evil, and that's my story, and I want you to let me go. So is it likely that we're going to be successful or not? Do we have little chance? I'm going to say, so this is a table that comes from EZd6, which is most appreciated because it is within the mechanics of the system, which is rolling D6s and looking for a 6 as a success. Now, there are lots of different probability tables that one could use. We could get more specific, but I'm going to say that, listen, the guards know our human conjurer. They've been around working for the family since he was young. They're kind of inclined to believe him, so we're going to say it's likely his story is going to work. We're going to roll per this rubric here, per this table, and we did indeed come up with the needed success. So the guards are going to sort of step aside and let us move out of the castle grounds, and we are decidedly into the wilderness here, and we have walked by this gnarled trunk. We'll keep this out as a reminder of the little story piece that we have developed, and we will continue on. Now, I could decide, I'm not doing it this way, but I could decide that because that was a kind of successful encounter, the threat level has diminished. So I could bring this back down to 2 if I want to play that way. Well, maybe I will play that way. So I'll play that way, bring that back down to 2. So the next time we have, or when we're prompted to roll for threat, it is even slightly greater chance of success because we just succeeded there. put my initiative cards back in the deck, shuffle that up, and we will keep going. And so we're out wandering, and I don't really have anything at this point that I need to do. I could go back to these dice. I could go to a sort of an action and theme table if I want a more general prompt. I have action and theme tables that I can roll on here, which will give me some concept of direction, but I think we're still working with the bigger theme of trying to help our dwarf delver, and I think I'm pretty good to go back to these dice right now to see what's coming up next. So we are getting here more encounter cards, or here the second one is going to be a random table of relevance, and the purple triangle is a magic roll. So I have keyed some of the random tables to purple. So when I get purple, I'm going to go to a D4 and roll. But let's see, first of all, sort of what order we're going to be dealing with these in. And we'll go this way. So the very first thing we are going to be doing is looking to a random table of relevance or pulling 2 encounter cards. But I think we're wandering out. We've left our castle, so I think it's okay for us to figure out, we could consider that maybe we're on something the outskirts of the area. I'm going to go with that we're on the outskirts of the area and roll here. Now, I could have obviously used this actual map that I have really just as background for the video, and I could place our characters here. I could say that we started out here. I think there's, this looks like maybe a castle here. We've moved here, say, or I could have even rolled, obviously I could have rolled the D6, and we could be walking up into the mountains here. I'm deciding not to do that. It's partially just difficult for the video where I have the static camera that I just hit to do, but also I didn't really, once you start to get too specific with too many different suggestive resources, they might not match up. So for example, if we were moving along here and we were in a forest and then we were directed to pull an outdoor encounter card that had nothing to do with a forest, we would be giving ourselves some headache. So I'm not doing that, but I will go to this general concept of outskirts. So the first thing we're going to do is we will roll on the outskirts table that I previously identified, and it's on page 46 in this book, and we'll see these are D12 tables, I think all of them. Oh no, excuse me, they're all D20 tables. So we will roll here and see what we're seeing. 14. Among the rocks you find a geode of red crystal interior. All right, so we're picking up something and we're going to add that to our inventory. I haven't really set up. We're going to have a shared inventory here, and the options at this point now are to simply pick that up and move on, or to think about, does this mean anything in our story? We could start to ask questions about it. Is it a signal we're going in the right direction, or is it dangerous, etc.? You can really build out in any way you want. I think for right now, I'm just going to basically put it in our knapsack, and we will then move on to the next thing to resolve, which unfortunately I think I moved these cards. The next thing to resolve is this, the purple roll. Now this is what I considered to be magic. There were 4 random tables that I previously identified as magical ones, so we're going to roll our D4, and then we're going to roll on the purple 3 table, again coming from this book, and we will see what we get. So we picked up that red crystal, and the next thing that happens is we find a set of mangled lockpicks. They have been destroyed in a futile attempt to open a door somewhere. Now, again, we can just pick those up. We can take that to be literal, or we can take that to be figurative. And I think in this particular case, I'm going to take that as a sign that perhaps we are not the first sibling in this family to attempt to leave the mage fortress and help our friend. Perhaps these mangled lockpicks signal failure and a futile attempt to open a door somewhere, to get somewhere new. So I'm going to take this symbolically to mean that as we're wandering, we're getting a little bit of a sign that this has been tried before, and perhaps our journey is going to be a little bit more difficult than we thought. And I'm going to say that makes our threat rise a little bit. Nothing overt, but just a sense that this is going to be a little bit harder than we think. And that leads us to the final card here for this roll, which is to draw an encounter card. And we'll just draw this, and we get a crossroads. Where two major roads between cities come together, you find a marker with signs pointing to each of the cities. Tacked to the post are two notices. They're offering a reward for a goblin head. The other says to watch for bandits on the trail. Information is always useful to those who live as dungeoneers. So, again, we are both thematically and logistically that we're at a crossroads. We need to decide which way we're going to go. And, on some level, we could say that this is a potential for a quest. If we wanted to get some gold for a goblin head, we could go and seek of, or we could develop a quest for ourselves. But we are set in our ways. And I think, again, partially thematically, narratively, the crossroads is reaffirming our dedication as the human conjurer to our friend, the dwarf delver. We are reaffirming our desire to help him, and we're going to turn away from the quest. Well, sorry about that. I got carried away and cut off I ran out of recording space. Anyway, what I was saying was that this is reaffirming the conjurer's sense that this is what he's going to do. He is not going to be distracted by the offer of 3 gold for some other quest, and they're going to continue on and set off to help the dwarf delver. So we've resolved all of these. We will put these back, and I think we will continue along. No need right now, I think, for me to do anything else except stick to my planned sequence of play here. We'll give a roll to these dice, and we will continue on. Ooh, we got not magical. These are, the blue it's a signal that there's water nearby, that we can camp, we must consume a ration, and actually the green is a foraging action. So this is saying to me, this is going to end our first day, basically. We've wandered far and wide, and it doesn't really matter. The initiative here doesn't really matter, because this is what we're doing. We have rations. The first thing we can do is forage. We're in a safe scenario here, and our threat level is only 3, so I will say that moving to how EZd6 works is you are needing to meet or beat a task number, and if you are rolling with a boon, you're going to +1 d6 and take the high number. If you are rolling with a bane, you're going to roll +1 and take the low number, and the value that you are trying to meet or beat is determined by this here. So if something is super easy, you just need to meet or beat a 2 on, well, really say 1d6, like that. It is an easy d6 resolution. This is the heart of the mechanics of this game. A 1 is always going to be a fail and something bad will happen, and a 6 is going to be an exploding die. So you can, for example, in combat, do a strike and roll again. If you roll a 6 in some other narrative thing, it would, at least in my way of playing, would symbol something extra good is going to happen. I don't know that I would do another roll, but perhaps I would give myself something extra good. And this is the task number structure here. So as the soloist, you would either decide narratively how easy or hard something is. So in this particular case, we've gotten, based on what I have set up, we've gotten 2 signals that there's water nearby, 1 signal that we can forage. That says to me that this is, we're not in, and our threat level is only a 3. This kind of all adds up to, I would just say this is a normal task, and we're not doing anything. I think, let's see, does somebody, perhaps one of my characters has a boon. No, I guess I don't actually have, nobody really has a boon at foraging or anything like that. So are we going to, how hard is it going to be to forage for food? I'll just say it's a normal difficulty. So we are rolling a D3 now, excuse me, a D6. Now, the question is everybody foraging? In which case, we're actually going to be rolling 3d6, 1 for everyone. I actually had them keyed. If it matters who is who, we have my d6s here. If it matters who finds the food or who doesn't find the food, and this is how we roll. Now, interestingly, in doing this, we did roll a fail, so something bad is going to happen. So we've got our 2 successes and our 1 failure here in looking around for food. So perhaps this signals that our halfling rascal either, maybe he disturbed, we made some noise or something, and we've got the 2 successes, but maybe this means that we've disturbed some wildlife and they kind of looking around at us and we're in a little bit of danger. So perhaps narratively, I'll say that he has raised our threat level a little bit. And we will, as we camp out here tonight thematically, we're going to consume one of our rations that somebody has. I'll figure out who that was, but we set out with some rations, and we will, as the evening settles and we go to sleep over the course of the night, we will do a threat roll to see if we're disturbed during the night. And again, per what I have decided, our threat roll is we're going to roll this D12, and if we roll above the current threat level, which is 4, we are fine. If we roll the current threat level or lower, then we have a threat. If we roll right actually at the threat level, we have a threat and then something extra bad. So we'll give this a roll. We're basically looking for a 5+, and we're fine. So we're good on the threat. We've made it through the night, and now we are starting out on a new day, and we will regroup here. We'll get our initiative cards reshuffled, as it were, and we will continue rolling our dice. I'm still feeling pretty good about this as a mechanism for generating the story. We've camped out. Our little rascal, kind of failed us slightly, but here we are again. So now we get these values. We've got more opportunity at a certain point to forage, and let's just see, the order here is going to make a little bit of a difference, I think. So the first thing that we do is we're looking to roll either on a random table of relevance or draw to encounter cards, and we are still, I think we are beyond the outskirts. Maybe we're in the forest, so I think I'll have us roll on the forest table here and just see what happens. A lot of these tables are like finding something, so it is going to obviously direct the narrative. It's not completely random, and of course random tables are not completely random, they're constructed. But we see a webbed wrapped corpse dangles from above, adorned with a small silver locket that reads J. Lee. So we have, as we wake up in the forest, we see coming out of our encampment a web-wrapped corpse. Well, that is a pretty bad sign. We can attempt, it dangles from above. Let's see, can we attempt, we can certainly attempt to get this locket here. And we've got, our rascal here does get a boon on an acrobatic task. I'm going to say it's going to be pretty tough, though. It's going to be a hard task. So he's going to get a boon to roll. He's going to make an attempt with a boon to roll and see if he can get a 5 or above to get up there to get that locket, and he can't. So he comes close, but he's attempting it. He can't get it. He can't redeem himself from the causing the threat level to rise there. And let's see, does anybody else have something that particular that they can do here? No, we can attempt to try to climb the tree. In a case like this, everybody has to take an action before somebody goes back to the action, just to kind of spread it around, as it were. So the rascal can't do it, and we can have our dwarf delver attempt here. He doesn't roll with any particular boon, but maybe he'll get up there. Nope, he can't. And finally, the conjurer is looking around and says, oh, I'm going to give it a try. And indeed, ooh, he rolled a 6. So the conjurer, using no magic at all, climbs up the tree and grabs this, it was a silver locket, I think. Let's see, and we get the 6. So the 6 is, well, it's a web-wrapped corpse adorned with a small silver locket. So we're going to grab the locket. We're going to also get to pull down the corpse. And the boon that we're going to get as a result of this is an ability to, I'm going to roll up a random NPC, I think, to see who was this corpse, and maybe this is going to give us some information about our journey, about what's going on here. And there are tables in the EZd6. There are NPC tables in the back, and that's what we're going to turn to get some information about our corpse here, this web-wrapped corpse. So, an NPC purpose. Let's see. Now remember, this is a corpse. So, nevertheless, we're going to roll the purpose of this corpse. Incompetent makes the heroes work harder. All right. We're going to put this all together and see what this might mean in the context, what the commoners want. So the NPC was trying to get by, but it's going to, the symbol that this narratively, this is going to make us work harder. An incompetent person just trying to get by. And the powerful apprize the wealth above everything. All right, so what this says to me is that this fellow here in the who is strung up in this web-wrapped corpse was a maybe the brother of or friend of our dwarf delver here. And what he had been trying to do was let's say he was his brother. He was originally trying to help his brother get more magic to help them both escape and realize their destiny. And he failed at doing that. He was just not quite there. He stole this silver locket, and because the powerful in this world apprize wealth above everything else, he paid the price for that, and he was strung up by the webbing of, say, there's a giant spider. There's going to be giant spiders in this world. The giant spiders were put under the spell of, or perhaps worked in service of, those who caught this other guy who was attempting to, maybe he was attempting to escape. Maybe he wasn't necessarily related to the dwarf delver, but he was trying somehow to make his way in the world, and it's going to reinforce that our party is going to work harder. But what is this locket that he had that we now have? It's going to be something magic, I'll say. Why not? And we're going to get to roll on. There are some magic treasure tables here, and there's even a way of enchanting things, magic armor. But I think I'm going to go to, not going to go here. I think for my sense of what this is, sorry about that, I'm going to go to the table, the Rogue Magic table in the Solo GM guide, because that abstraction here, these are 2d12 rolls, and so that gives me, it's an abstract roll, and I like that. I like that for a magical thing. So we got an 8 and a 7, and we got conceal animal or plant. Conceal animal or plant. And how is that going? What does that mean in the context here? So I've had to think about it, and there's a way in which my human conjurer, they are this botanical magic. Now that has to do with controlling plants, but the webbing of this character, the fact that the random magical generation of the locket resulted in something to do with concealing animals or plants, it's telling me it's it's pointing me back to this, the type of magic that my human conjurer is, and maybe something that has gone wrong with it. Because in this world, in order to cast a spell, you have to, in certain cases, anchor that spell. And if you're unable to do that, if you are distracted or injured or something while you're trying to cast that spell, the spell might not go as planned. And perhaps what this all is a message that the to the my hero here, my self-declared hero, that they are not invincible, and the fact that they're trying to save this dwarf, or get this dwarf to a place where they can learn more magic, may not be possible. The other thing to note that's relevant is that one of the hedge wizard spells that my dwarf has is a webbing spell, that it can web up to 6 targets, and they uh, well, it can web targets, and they have to roll a 6 to break free. So again, it's all kind of thematic to the concept of this magic that's going on or trying to be protected or enhanced here. And I don't know how the locket will come into play, but perhaps it will be something that can either help or go awry at a key moment at some point when magic is called upon. I mean, that's what I'm kind of concluding from all of this. So I think that resolves where we are, and we are going to continue on here and give another roll and see what we are getting. So we're getting, we'll do our initiatives here. The red triangles are, those are definitely encounter cards, and the well, they're all actually encounter cards. These are 3 encounter cards here, so I don't really need to roll initiative because the single paw here is also an encounter card. So basically, I'm going to draw 3 encounter cards, and we will resolve them in the order that they come out of the deck here. And it's a locked chest we find along the road. So we're continuing to walk along the road, battered and beaten from whatever tumble it must have taken from a wagon. It's locked tight, but not so secure that we can't pick the lock and get at the goods. Now, this tells us what we find inside: several loose coins, a couple of gold chains, and a letter. I'm not sure that I would take this so easily. Perhaps I would have I do have a boon on lockpicking. I think my rascal here gets a, well, that's traps, actually. So nobody really does have a boon on it. So it's described as locked tight, but not so secure that it can't be. I'll give that a hard as a 4, and we'll give a roll to see if anybody can get in there, and indeed somebody does, and it is our dwarf delver. We're getting another benefit here, so I'll take that benefit to be what's on the card here: a couple of gold chains, and we'll just roll. We got a d12 here. Let's roll it. Let's roll a 12, d12. So we're gonna say we picked up 4 gold here, and we will put that in our pockets. So that was a pretty benign encounter. As we continue on now, we see a ruined shrine. Once a holy place, the shrine was bashed and desecrated, and is now nothing more than a collection of shattered stones and broken dreams. Now, we remember that we are ultimately on our way to this place of power that is also described as something radiating holy magic. So the question I will ask now as an oracle question is this ruined shrine a symbol, a signal that we are getting close to where we are meant to be? And I can use this, I can modify the existing table in EZd6 to answer that question, and then I would have to assign a value. So is it likely, is it probably not, or is there a little chance? This doesn't totally work, so I probably would go to my handy D100 percentile table. That's a better offers me a little more here. So the question is this ruined shrine a signal that we are close to where we are going to go? And I'm just going to give it 50-50 odds. So we will then roll a D100 for that and see, and we got a 12. So that means that it is yes. We are firmly in, this is going to be a signal that we are nearing nearing the place that we're trying to go. And then the third card is a dark grave. This is standing stones that surround the grave emit a low, faint humming sound as you approach, almost as if they were alive and warning you and your companions. So what this says to me thematically is that we are approaching this place of power, and it is a place where evil had been, and perhaps evil still resides. There are perhaps guards here. We saw at the outset of leaving our castle that we had to pass by the guards, and we were able to do that successfully in a non-violent way. But here we are approaching this place, and I think thematically that says to me that it is guarded, and it is guarded probably by unfriendly people. I have my list here of options for things that I could roll on, but there are guardsmen in the minions here, and I'm going to say that we are approaching this, and there's going to be we'll say D4 guardsmen here. So actually there's 4 guards that we have encountered here, and that is going to lead to a confrontation. So we see these 4 guardsmen standing around here, and there are a couple things. First, I want to determine something about them. So we're going to go here to the character attitudes table, and we'll roll 2 d6s, and we'll read them. Well, we got 1 and 1. So they are willing. They are willing somehow. So they're not immediately aggressive. And I think I'm also gonna roll on this NPC traits table as well and see. They're willing and they're cautious. So what that means is in combat, they're more easily surprised or ambushed. Narratively may represent danger ahead, something underestimated that the PCs need to reevaluate. Additional information, possibly negative, that we need to deal with, but they are willing. So that's a little contradictory, but they're not immediately aggressive, I think, is the bottom line here. And they are coming from, in EZd6, they are basically minions here, and so these are disposable squads of wimpy foes. They have 1 strike, 1 health, basically. To hit them, we need to roll 3 or better, and they do appear in numbers, and again, we have 4 of them. Now, the guardsmen are described as having a +4 to hit because they have armor, so we actually need to roll a 4+ in order to hit them. But we do have, they're not particularly aggressive according to the little attributes that I gave them. Nevertheless, though, I think they are guarding this place of power. So we are going to engage in combat with them. We're going to come in as the aggressive ones, and we're going to have to just try to take them out because we need to attain our goal of getting to this place of power, and they might be a little disorganized, or not particularly resistant, but they are still, they're not going to be completely accommodating. So I think it seems clear here. What's going to happen is our dwarf delver is going to attempt to use his scroll, and his scroll is, what's really cool is the magic spells and scrolls here are named after wizards. So he's got Sabbat Spinner, and that will allow him to web up to 6 nearby targets in sticky, gooey webbing. To do that, he can roll a 2d6 and get to re-roll any ones. However, it's a one-time use thing, so if it fails, it's gone either way. He needs a 4 or better on one of 2d6 rolls, and he's going to rise up and attempt to do this, and then web these guardsmen so the party can enter in, because after all, we are here for him, and he wants to show the human conjurer that he's worthy of that, and he succeeds twice actually, and he gets the 4 that he actually needs. So he casts this scroll, which is now gone, but he webs the 4 guardsmen, and our party can now enter into this place of power, and we will see next what happens when they're there. And I think at this point I will turn the focus of the story from the greater outdoors to more of a dungeon crawl. And I'm not going to show this on video because the video is going to be running too long, because I want to get into talking a little bit more about EZd6 itself. But my next play would be to go to the kind of random generators I have for dungeons themselves, and you've seen some of these or many of these in other videos, card decks and dice and things that create an actual dungeon crawl environment, and that is where my party will go next. They will be inside the place of power, and I'll be determining how they go through there as the guards are outside struggling. I guess I should give them an opportunity they can escape with a roll of a 6. Now, I guess it's a little ambiguous as to whether they each roll a 6 or collectively in the web they roll a 6. So that's a pretty big difference. But, well, we rolled a 3. So that was one roll where they did not escape. And I suppose I could say that they each get to roll to escape. So we can roll 3 more times to see if anybody can escape. And in fact, somebody did. So I got a roll of a 6 there. If we're playing this way, what that means is one of these guards was able to escape this webbing and is perhaps now chasing our party maybe into the place of power, and that could perhaps play out if in fact we were allowed a roll for each of them struggling there in that web. Nevertheless, either way, that is an option, a narrative option that I would have to develop. I'm not going to do that for this video because I do want to get into talking about a little bit more about the EZd6 itself as a rule set that is very flexible, as you can see, and simple, and as such useful for solo play. And we will just look here at the credits for it. And the single book, as I said, I bought both the rule book and the book of quests because I feel that in the book of quests there are a number of extractable D20 tables to create the possibility for rolling and developing environmental things. Like, for example, let's just see, there is a mage tower. There's a mage tower table in there, and let's check that one out and just see. One option would be to take a D20 roll now as we enter in, and we got a 6, and it says A skeleton partial that looks to have been crushed long ago is here in the entryway. We could search that skeleton, perhaps it could come to life, etc. We could, let's see, there's a haunted underground crypt area. We could decide that that is something that is the place of power and roll on that for some suggestion. And if we did that and we rolled an 18, a cloak brooch is found, elven style but very old. Its engraving reads, "My life for Mordu, my life for the Fell." So that could come in as a narrative suggestion, just one possibility of using those tables here as a way of beginning to flesh out or develop or understand this place of power as it relates to our story. There's also one that has to do with fallen temples, and we could perhaps roll on that to get some flavor, and we'll just give an example here. What that would be, if we rolled a 12 on that, a wooden shield, still usable, crest of 4 gates. So again, prompts that you could develop if you went that route. But back to the main rules. As I said, this is basically centers on the difficulty task of rolling 1d6 against this difficulty scale, where you need to meet or beat a number. And if you get a 1, it's always going to be a failure. If you get a 6, it's always going to be an extra success in some way. And it says for most combat situations, you roll 3 or higher to hit the target, and the enemies need a 3 to hit you. In the case that we saw with the guards, they had an extra benefit of armor, so we needed to roll 4+. And that is basically the core mechanic of the game. In terms of the characters, well, there's karma. So there's luck on their side, and you start with 3 karma at the beginning of every session, and when you fail an action, you gain a karma. I'm not sure I remember to do that in my demo here, but it is a great little saving benefit because you can use your karma later to improve a die roll by 1. So if you get a 3 and you needed a 4 and you had karma, you could spend it there. But you can't use karma on magic. So that's a nice way, especially in solo play. That's, I think, a nice way to keep the story going, because if you're failing a lot and not getting anything out of it, and you're sitting there by yourself, things can just grind to a halt. There are actions that you can do in a turn that are sort of spelled out as such: attacking, casting a spell, using a scroll, disarming a trap, etc. And then there are free actions like basically roleplay, speaking to an enemy, or drawing your weapon out. The concept of having an action and a free action, I think, is very useful in solo play. As you can see, I develop a sequence of play, and I talk about the utility of doing sequences of play in the GM guide and in a lot of different videos I have, because I think it gamifies the session in a way that is freeing, actually, unlike a board game where it is a stricture. In solo RPG, I think having that type of sequence of play actually frees you up to feel like you have something to do. The heart of the character development, I think, so there are hero paths here, and they are given a health and armor, what their boons are. That boon, as a reminder, rolling 2d6 and taking the most beneficial outcome. And they're described pretty simply and basically. You could see here our Delver had a medium armor, which allowed us to save against wounds on a 5+. There's something called a miraculous save, which will miraculously save you. And for the Delver, that would have been a roll of a 6 on 1 die. We had a boon on melee or ranged weapons or anything subterranean, which we're about to, in the next life of this party, go into this place of power, probably subterranean. And so our Delver is going to come to importance there by having a lot of boons for actions that are taken. Gear, and then the key, the heart of the characters is this concept of inclination. Inclinations are something that characters can choose to flesh out who they actually are, and they are, you choose 2 or 3 depending if you're a human. It's basically like a hero path, and it says here the hero path is painting your hero in a broad stroke. Inclinations refine your hero with extra abilities and powers and represent the unique background or skill set they possess. So for example, perhaps you could choose, and you can just choose these. You could choose cat-like. They can only ever be knocked prone if hit by a crit and have a 4+ miraculous save when falling. So thematically, that makes somebody very different than if they don't have that. For my inclinations, for example, here, I had, let's see. So, for example, for my Dwarf Delver, one of my inclination was Hedge Wizard. So I gave that ability to use scrolls to the Dwarf Delver in my character creation, and I also made them an alchemist, which this didn't come into play, but they knew potion making and have a boon in identifying substances, and they started with 2 free healing potions or random ones or rolls on the potion table. So thematically, I chose alchemist to go with Hedge Wizard because I wanted to make this character sort of having that relationship to magic, and that ultimately, as you recall if you watched the whole video, came into play with how we developed the story. And there are a number of different pages of these. We'll just look at a couple of others. So we've got sticky fingers. We can steal small objects from targets and remain unnoticed given the opportunity unless we roll a 1. We could be a trap finder. We could have treasure sense, knowing if treasure is nearby. There are sort of combat related ones like marksman. We could have a boon in ranged weapons. And we could do something like be faithful, where demons and undead can only hit us on a 5+, even though the default is to be hit on a 3+. So those are the keys to developing your character. And then we have, if we are a magic user, we have these circles of sorcery, and we can choose one. And as mentioned, we chose the botanicalist, but we could have been an elementalist. And there are descriptions here I won't get into about magic, but it is allowing you to develop a theme around your character to differentiate your magical user a little bit more. There are groups of common gear that you roll on here, and again, very simple. You can just see from the amount of listing here that it's all D6 based. There's a section, a rabble-rousing section here. This is basically for the GM, and it will give you some basics about creating exciting stories. Sorry about that. Again, I lost capacity to film, which is always the sign that I'm really enjoying the filming of what I'm doing. So, as I was saying, there is the GM section with some advice about how to run exciting adventures, and this is a nice little tip here, asking the players to roll anything but a 1. So it says, when the heroes decide to do something with a low chance of failure, but the consequences would be interesting, you could ask them to roll anything but a 1. And again, it doesn't have any actual impact on the die rolling, of course, but it does create like an excitement here. And I think it says asking the players to roll anything but a 1 can be a nail biter. It's like saying there's a narrow chance of total disaster. Don't use this mechanic too often, but when you do, make the consequences of failure truly terrible. So, in a party situation here, you could just say to yourself, I hope I don't roll a 1, and you would have your roll. Now, if you don't roll a 1, it doesn't get terribly exciting, but it's a nice little mechanic that's very narratively intertwined, I think, and that's the key to successful rules and mechanical suggestions, especially for solo play when you are both the player and the GM. There are some there's the monster listing here as mentioned, and what's nice is you get it broken down for you with a D20 table that is numbered for a classic monster list and then the EZd6 monster list. We didn't get a chance to see really any of these, but I do love it when there is an amount of monsters and a key table. It doesn't take much for a designer to put this in. It helps the soloist. Of course, it helps a regular GM who wants to just get something random, but it allows you to not have to create the table for yourself. Now, as you'll recall, I made my own D30 table because I pre-selected things that I thought might work for my story, and I also added in some NPC minions because I thought that might come up, and indeed it did come up because we encountered those. I wanted to encounter some guardsmen that made thematic sense, but the monster entries are fairly basic. You have a description of what they are, like the living elemental here, strikes, which are essentially the health of the monster and the 2-hit value. So a dragon is going to take a 5 or more to hit, whereas an elemental will take a 3 or more to hit. And then a description of some other kinds of things that can flesh out what the monster can do. For the EZd6 monsters, so for example, this is the Beast, a primal engine of fear and death, you can see we're getting a much more robust listing here, and we still have the 2 stats. This takes 10 strikes, 10 health, but just a 3 to hit. But it explains more. It explains what it is about, what it looks like. It has acute hearing, and what happens around the area. Around the area, the beast quickly becomes slick with slime, make a 3+ check while in melee, or be unable to move that turn. So and then there's a little history of this. The beast is birthed by foul magic and alchemy, etc. I don't have the time to kind of review all of that here, but for the EZd6 monsters, we get an illustration and we get this little background story. I love this piece of art here for the Festoid. This is a small, fast ravager with an endless hunger. So a lot of fun stuff here. So we have that section, and then we get into the magic treasures. We saw this a little bit in the video with some of the scrolls here, and again, that little conceit of naming the scroll after the wizard who originally created it. I really love that. It gives some flavor and personality to the magic system. We have some magic treasures and some random tables here at the back to enchant something, create something. Many of these are D6, so not tons of options, but still gives you enough to create something on your own. And you get some D20 tables for magic properties for your treasure. We have rules references back here, and the whole rules reference really just takes like a 2-page spread here because it is pretty simple. And this is basically going over everything we saw. The magic, I did a little bit different on this magic when I was casting that spell. I used basically the target number for the armor value for those guardsmen that we were going to be placing into the web, as opposed to a meeting or beating a resistance number that had to do with the power level, because it was just easier for me to appropriate that value that I already had. Again, here is a repeat of the 2 D20 rolls for the monsters, as well as some encounter twists that you can roll on. We didn't get to this in the video, but this is also very useful for solo play. It's only a D6 table, but it gives you some twists that can happen in an encounter or as well in battle. So all of a sudden, perhaps the monster could be a fake and illusion, and you could use this obviously very effectively as a solo player. We saw me rolling on this NPC creator table. I never did actually give my characters names, but I rolled on these to determine something narratively about the web corpse that we came upon. And then there are some tables here for creation of lairs, giving it aspects, some boss monster buffs. Again, they're small, short tables, but it's nice that they're here in this one book. We created our minion here for our guardsmen, and we had that other value here. And I showed you as well this searching and probability roll table that is put into the D6 system for the game, which is handy. And then we have some character sheets here, and obviously I was not using those. So that is a look inside EZd6, which is a great minimalist rule set for solo play. It is not a solo designed rule set, but it is great to use for solo play, I should say. And you saw me creating the story with some external materials. As a reminder, there is a link to everything I use down below, and the Solo GM guide itself was forming the principles of the 4 aspects of resources that I brought in to create my story. And I hope that you have enjoyed watching and feel inspired to pick up EZd6 or some other simple rule set that provides enough structure to get going with a fun, fast-paced solo session that doesn't take a ton of time to get off the ground.